The afternoon was draped in the lazy golden hues of summer as I prepared the guest room for my mother's visit. It had been over a year since we last met, the pandemic stretching distances even further. I anticipated her arrival with a mix of eagerness and anxiety, knowing her visits, though infrequent, often carried the weight of unsaid words waiting to be spoken. As she settled in, the initial pleasantries faded quickly, replaced by a palpable tension. Over dinner, my mother's usual chatter about neighbors and local gossip was scant. Her eyes, normally warm and inviting, carried a storm I knew all too well. "Son," she began, her voice lower than usual, stirring her tea absent-mindedly. "I know it's none of my business, but your wife, well, there's something you need to know." The clink of her spoon against the china sounded like a warning bell. I paused, fork mid-air. "What about her, Mom?" She hesitated, the word seeming to choke her. "It's just... I've heard things. She's been seen quite often with your father's friend, Mark. They seem unusually close." I felt a chill run down my spine. "What are you saying, Mom?" She reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "I'm just worried for you. People talk, and I don't want you to be the last to know if there's something going on." The rest of the evening passed in a blur. My wife, Lara, was late from work again, a recurring theme these past months. When she finally arrived, her smile was tight, her explanations rushed. "Just caught up at the office," she said, avoiding my gaze. Sleep was elusive that night. My mother's words echoed in my head, mingling with countless memories of Lara's recent late nights and weekend meetings. The seed of doubt was planted, and with it grew a gnawing need for the truth. The next morning, I watched from the window as Lara left for work. Her usual kiss goodbye felt colder, more perfunctory. Once her car disappeared around the corner, a resolve hardened within me. Today, I would follow her. I needed to see for myself what was happening, to confront whatever lay hidden in the shadows of doubt. As I trailed her car at a safe distance, my mind raced with possibilities. The drive seemed longer than usual, each turn amplifying my anxiety. Finally, she pulled into a residential area, not her usual route to work. The house she stopped at was unfamiliar, a modest two-story tucked away behind blooming hydrangeas. She stepped out, a quick glance around before she walked up to the door. It opened before she could knock. There stood Mark, my father's old golf buddy. His greeting was too warm, too intimate, a kiss on the cheek that lingered far too long. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. This was no mere suspicion anymore, it was real. Anger bubbled up, mixing with a sharp sense of betrayal. I watched, hidden by my car and the overgrown foliage, as they disappeared inside, the door closing behind them. As I sat there, the neighborhood's quiet mocking my turmoil, I realized this was just the beginning. Whatever lay behind that door, whatever my next steps were, nothing would be the same again. My mother had opened a door to a truth I could no longer ignore, and I had to decide how far I was willing to go to uncover the full extent of the betrayal. Today was just the start. Heart pounding, my hands gripped the steering wheel as I watched the door to Mark's house close behind Lara and him. The quiet of the street feels like a stark contrast to the storm raging inside me. With every minute that ticks by, my resolve hardens. I can't just sit here and do nothing. Taking a deep breath, I step out of the car. The neighborhood is unfamiliar, the houses lining the street like silent judges to my personal drama. As I approach the house, the sounds of laughter and faint music filter through the walls, heightening my sense of dread. I reach the front door, my hand hesitating on the bell. Instead, my ear presses against the cool wood, straining to catch snippets of conversation. The voices are muffled, but unmistakable, the laughter of a woman, my wife's laughter, mingling with deeper tones. My heart sinks further with each chuckle and whisper that slips through the door. Fueled by a mix of fear and anger, I circle to the back of the house, searching for another way in. A slightly ajar window at the side seems like an invitation or a challenge. With a quick glance around to ensure no eyes are upon me, I pry it open further and climb inside. The room is dimly lit, the air thick with the scent of incense and something floral. It's an office, lined with bookshelves and a large desk cluttered with papers. I move silently, my every step a calculated risk. As I edge closer to the source of the voices, the details become clearer. Laughter again, then a man's voice. "Lara, you always know how to make things more interesting." I freeze. Another man's voice, one I hadn't expected, chills my blood. It's my father's. A mix of betrayal and confusion wells inside me. What is he doing here? How could he? I push open the door slightly, peering into the room. There, in the softly lit living room, are Lara, Mark, and my father, drinks in hand, too comfortable in each other's company. They haven't noticed my arrival, wrapped up in their jovial betrayal. With a deep breath, I step into the room, unable to contain my presence any longer. Having fun? I ask, my voice laced with a bitterness I can't hide. The room falls silent. 3 pairs of eyes turn towards me, each reflecting a cocktail of shock and guilt. Lara's face drains of color, while my father stiffens, his usual authoritative demeanor faltering. "Lara, what is this?" My voice is barely a whisper, but it cuts through the silence sharply. Lara stammers, her eyes darting nervously between me and my father. We were just. Save it, I snap, unable to stomach any excuses. I turn to my father. "And you? How could you?" His face, normally so composed, crumbles under the weight of my gaze. "Son, I can explain." "No," I cut him off, stepping back, feeling the room spin around me. "I don't need any more lies." My phone vibrates in my pocket, and I pull it out to see a text from my mother. "Come home. We need to talk. It's urgent." The room behind me buzzes with hushed, frantic whispers as I step back through the doorway, leaving the shattered pieces of trust and family behind. Whatever my mother has to say, it feels like the next piece of a puzzle too painful to put together. But I have to face whatever comes next, armed with the truth, no matter how harsh it might be. As I drive back, the city lights blur into streaks of color, mirroring the turmoil inside me. Tonight has changed everything, and there's no turning back. The drive home is a blur, my mind racing as fast as my car. The shock of seeing my father and Lara together, with Mark as some sick chaperone, gnaws at me with every mile. I can't shake the image, the laughter, their too comfortable ease around each other. What could my mother possibly add to this nightmare? Pulling into the driveway, I notice another car parked next to mine, unfamiliar and out of place. A chill of apprehension sweeps over me as I cut the engine and step out. The front door is ajar, light spilling out onto the porch. Inside, voices rise and fall, one sharply familiar. Pushing the door open, I'm met by the sight of my mother in the living room, her expression grave. Beside her stands a man, about my father's age, but unfamiliar, his face etched with concern. "Mom? Who is this?" My voice is sharp, my nerves frayed to breaking. She stands, coming towards me with outstretched arms, but stops short as she sees the turmoil in my eyes. "Honey, this is David. He's an old friend of your father's, and, it turns out, much more." David steps forward, his hand extended, but I don't take it. "What does that mean?" "More to who?" He lowers his hand, his eyes meeting mine squarely. "I think it's time we had a very honest conversation. It's about your father and his dealings." My confusion deepens, a headache brewing at the base of my skull. "Dealings? Are we still talking about Lara?" David glances at my mother before answering. "It's all connected. Your father has been involved in some questionable business. It's why I'm here. And unfortunately, it involves Lara and Mark more than just socially." The room spins slightly as I sink into a chair. "I don't understand. Are you saying this is more than an affair?" "Yes," David confirms, pulling documents from his briefcase. "Your father has been laundering money through various businesses for years. Mark's company is one of them. Lara, I believe, found out and was pulled in." The papers in his hand tremble slightly, whether from his own nerves or the gravity of the news he delivers. Your wife might have started as a victim in this, but it's possible she chose to become a part of it later. My mother's voice breaks through my stunned silence. We didn't want to tell you until we were sure. We're so sorry, son. But why? Why would she do this? The question feels naive even as I voice it. David sighs, a long, weary sound. Money, fear, manipulation. It could be many things. But what's important now is what you want to do about it. Revenge had seemed a clear path just hours ago, but now, armed with this twisted truth, it feels petty and insufficient. I need to confront them all. Expose everything. David nods, understanding flashing in his eyes. I can help with that. I have evidence of the transactions, connections with law enforcement. But it's risky, and you'd be exposing your family to public scrutiny. I stand, resolve hardening once more. They stopped being family when they chose betrayal and crime over honesty and loyalty. My mother reaches for me, her touch grounding. We'll support you, no matter what. The night stretches out before us, filled with plans and preparations. The storm has broken, and its aftermath promises to be just as turbulent as its onset. As I sit down with David to pore over documents and strategies, a single thought anchors me: this ends now, one way or another. The morning light does nothing to ease the tension that has set deep in my bones. Today, I confront everything: Lara, my father, Mark, the whole sordid affair tied up in illegal dealings. With David's documents neatly packed and the police informed, I drive to Mark's house, the scene of last night's revelation, now the stage for today's confrontation. David rides beside me, his presence a solid reassurance. When this is over, you'll be able to start fresh, he murmurs, more to the morning than to me. The house looms ahead, an ordinary facade hiding the betrayal within. As we pull up, 2 police cars are already discreetly parked to the side. The plan is in motion, the law ready to intervene. We approach the door, and I ring the bell, my heart thudding against my ribs. The door swings open, and Mark stands there, confusion etching his face at the sight of the police behind us. Can we help you? He asks, voice steady but eyes betraying his panic. I think you can, I say, stepping forward. We need to talk. About your business with my father. And about Lara. Mark hesitates only a moment before stepping aside to let us in. The living room is empty, but voices can be heard from the kitchen. As we enter, Lara turns, surprise flashing across her face. My father, sitting at the table, looks up, his expression unreadable. What is this? He demands. It's over, I state simply. We know about the money laundering, the betrayals. Lara's face crumbles, tears welling up. I wanted to tell you, she whispers, her voice breaking. But before more can be said, David steps forward, handing over the documents to a police officer. We have proof of your transactions, your partnerships. It's best you come clean now. As the police begin to read their rights, my father stands, fury contorting his features. You think you've figured it all out, he sneers at me. Then, turning to David, and you, an old friend, betraying me. David's response is calm, almost sad. I did what I had to do, for justice. For his son. It's then the door bursts open again. A woman strides in, older, authoritative, an FBI badge gleaming on her jacket. Not just for justice, she announces. Everyone freezes, the tension snapping tight. My name is Agent Reynolds, she continues, her gaze sweeping over us. And this is not just about money laundering. This was also a sting operation against a major criminal network, which, thanks to your family, we've been able to infiltrate and bring down. The room spins. A sting? Then, the realization hits, David hadn't just stumbled upon my father's crimes. He'd been part of this from the start. Lara looks from David to me, realization dawning on her too. I was trying to get out, she says, her voice a mix of defiance and pleading. They promised they'd protect me if I helped them. And she did, Agent Reynolds confirms. Her cooperation over the last few months has been invaluable. The betrayal stings, yet underneath, a strange relief begins to bloom. Lara had been part of this, but not in the way I'd believed. She'd been trying to right her wrongs. As the police lead my father and Mark away, Lara stays behind, her hand reaching out to me. I'm still processing, the hurt and the healing tangled together. David places a hand on my shoulder, giving it a squeeze. Sometimes, the truth is stranger than fiction, huh? I nod, unable to find words. Today, I'd come here to expose a betrayal, but had instead unraveled a larger truth, one that carried both pain and a promise of new beginnings. As the officers wrap up, Lara approaches. "Can we talk?" she asks, hopeful yet scared. "Let's talk," I agree, knowing it will be a long, difficult conversation, but necessary. As everyone else clears out, leaving us to mend what's broken, I realize that while today's truths have been harsh, they've also cleared the path for a future, uncertain but honest.